One of the most courageous warriors in history was definitely Galvarino, a famous Mapuche warrior. Galvarino fought in the Mayority battles back in the beginning of the Arauca War. Galvarino was an ordinary warrior throughout the war until an event came up which changed everything. He fought alongside 150 other men in the Battle of Lagunias against the governor, Garcia Hurtado de Mendoza, where they were all captured as prisoners of war. As punishment for this insurrection, prisoners of war right hand and nose were normally amputated. Or, in some cases both hands, as you can't wield a sword or any weapon then. Galvarino's hands were both cut off, and he was sent back to the Machupes as to put fear in them, that what might happen if they tend to fight back. Little did they know Galvarino wasn't just any warrior, and they were about to find out. Upon returning, Galvarino went to Caupolicán and the Council of War. Not for surrendering, but for seeking justice. For losing both his hands by the Spanish invaders, he insisted a greater uprising of the Machupe. For his bravery he was allowed to command a squadron, with knives strapped to his arms, where his hands used to be. He went to battle side by side with Caupolicán up until the Battle of Milarapue, where his squadron fought against the governor Mendoza. He got so close as to killing the second in command. However, Mendoza's command broke Galvarino's division in over an hour and killed over 3,000 Mapuches. Mendoza captured 800+ Mapuches for prisoners of war, where Galvarino was once again captured. On November 30, 1557, Galvarino was executed by hanging. Though he did not win the war, his bravery definitely influenced his followers and they all fought bravely, and he gave the Spanish one hell of a fight. The werewolf is a mythological animal and the subject of many stories throughout the world, and more than a few nightmares. Werewolves are, according to some legends, people who morph into vicious, powerful wolves. Others are a mutant combination of human and wolf. But all are bloodthirsty beasts who cannot control their lust for killing people and animals. It's unclear exactly when and where the werewolf legend originated. Some scholars believe the werewolf made its debut in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known Western prose, when Gilgamesh jilted a potential lover because she had turned her previous mate into a wolf. Many so-called werewolves from centuries ago were in fact serial killers, and France had its fair share. In 1521, Frenchmen Pierre Bergot and Michel Verdun allegedly swore allegiance to the devil and claimed to have an ointment that turned them into wolves. After confessing to brutally murdering several children, they were both burned to death at the stake. Burning was thought to be one of the few ways to kill a werewolf. Another story from the 16th century is about the werewolf of Dole. Who some said, they saw him shapeshifted. Apparently he was mentally ill and him and his wife moved outside of town into the woods, where as it goes, he used to hunt and kill whomever he sees fit. He was also burned at the stake for his violent and horrific acts. The movies shows us that it is cool to be a werewolf, but, in reality it is very sad for those who fell victim to both parties. The werewolf phenomenon may have a medical explanation. Take Peter the Wild Boy, for instance. In 1725, he was found wandering naked on all fours through a German forest. Many thought he was a werewolf or at least raised by wolves. Peter ate with his hands and couldn't speak. He was eventually adopted by the courts of King George I and King George II, and lived out his days as their pet in England. Research has shown Peter likely had Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, a condition discovered in 1978 that causes lack of speech, seizures, distinct facial features, difficulty breathing and intellectual challenges. Back in the medieval times, a lot of mental conditions were to blame for witches, werewolves and vampires and so forth. Unfortunately, a lot of innocent people lost their lives. Did giants exist? A lot of myths and folklore is available on the subject, but is or was there any proof? In the Book of Enoch, he describes giants as ruthless and strong with a never-ending hunger, where they eat the birds, the animals and even as normal-size human beings. It is believed that the Great Flood was put into action to rid of this evil giants. The book also goes so far as telling that fallen angels have fallen in love with human beings, and that they have conceived this giants that came into existence. It is also believed that in ancient times in the Nevada desert, giants inhabited this area where they shared the land with Native American tribes. The Paiutes called the giants Cetaceae, tule eaters. According to legend, red hair sprouted from every pore of their bodies. They stood up to 12 feet tall. Thousands of years ago, it's said they cannibalized the tribes of Lake Lahontan, the ancient waters that covered northern Nevada during the last ice age. The tribe would offer one of their own now and then to the giants, to be at peace with them. According to legend, the giants lived in the caves in the desert. And back in the 1800s, miners that were working in the caves found remains of over 60 native people and remains of giants. It was a very big find at the time, but after a while all the remains of the giants just vanished. No one knows what happened to it, so it is quite hard to determine whether they existed or not. Many giants in English folklore were noted for their stupidity. A giant who had quarreled with the mayor of Shrewsbury went to bury the city with dirt. However, he met a shoemaker, carrying shoes to repair, and the shoemaker convinced the giant that he had worn out all the shoes coming from Shrewsbury, and so it was too far to travel. Occasionally this is inverted, however, and a long-lived giant can become known for fairness and wisdom, such as the guardian figure of Ernegate in the New Forest. Other English stories told of how giants threw stones at each other, which was used to explain many great stones on the landscape. It is also believed that giants helped build the Tower of Babel and maybe also helped build the pyramids, although no evidence has been found yet to prove all of this. This abandoned public pool is in a town, never to work again. The big pool hosted 10 lanes 50 meter. It has a crack in the middle that cannot be fixed, due to nature taking over. Beauty is always found in decay. A little unknown history. As this statue was erected in memory of this person who was killed in this swimming pool, while diving of the diving plank, somebody kicked a ball across the swimming pool and the person fell on the ball and died. It is still a mystery what exactly happened. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this small adventure, please like, subscribe and hit that bell for any updates. The Lady of Lars, or Seer as most people know her, the Lady of Lars' real name. Mary Campbell predicted a lot of prophecies that came true in Scotland in the old village called Lars. Back in the 17th century she was living in a double-story house, while building a church nearby her house so that she can see the progressing of it. She predicted that the ridging stones that were to clad to roof's apex will never be set on it. Builders laughed and wanted to prove her wrong, and then one night a storm came and washed it all away into the loch where it can still be seen today. Apparently she also planted a tree in front of the church and predicted when cut down that person shall fell ill. Ignoring all this, John Campbell, local farmer, went and cut down the tree. Shortly afterwards he was gored down by his own Highland bull and his horse dropped dead. No one knows how Mary died. But it is thought she is buried somewhere under the ruins of the old village and her spirit haunts till this day. It is believed that all her prophecies is recorded in the Red Book of Ballo, a book shaped like a barrel and secured with 12 iron rings. Unfortunately no one has ever found this book yet. Her prophecies were bleak, but accurate. It ranged from the church, to the lands being plowed, building of the mills and lawers going abandoned in the end, never to be lived on again. If you are enjoying this marathon so far, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell for any updates and comment down below what you would like to see next on Exploration X. King of Spartans, Leonidas was a king of the city-state of Sparta from about 490 BC. He became king after his half-brother Cleomenes died under violent and slightly mysterious circumstances in 490 BC, without a male heir. Leonidas had been trained physically and mentally since childhood to become a hoplite warrior. As it was custom for all males to become hoplite warriors. Hoplites were armed with a round shield, spear and iron short sword. In battle, they used a formation called a phalanx, in which rows of hoplites stood directly next to each other so that their shields overlapped with one another. During a frontal attack, this wall of shields provided significant protection to the warriors behind it. If the phalanx broke or if the enemy attacked from the side or the rear, however, the formation became vulnerable. It was this fatal weakness to the otherwise formidable phalanx formation that proved to be Leonidas' undoing against an invading Persian army at the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC. Under Xerxes I, the Persian army moved south through Greece on the eastern coast, accompanied by the Persian navy moving parallel to the shore. To reach its destination at Attica, the region controlled by the city-state of Athens, the Persians needed to go through the coastal pass of Thermopylae, or the Hot Gates, so known because of nearby sulfur springs. In the late summer of 480 BC, Leonidas led an army of 6,000 to 7,000 Greeks from many city-states, including 300 Spartans, in an attempt to prevent the Persians from passing through Thermopylae. Leonidas established his army at Thermopylae, expecting that the narrow pass would funnel the Persian army toward his own force. For 2 days, the Greeks withstood the determined attacks of their far more numerous enemy. Leonidas' plan worked well at first, but he did not know that there was a route over the mountains to the west of Thermopylae that would allow the enemy to bypass his fortified position along the coast. A local Greek told Xerxes about this other route and led the Persian army across it, enabling them to surround the Greeks. Much of the Greek force retreated rather than face the Persian army. An army of Spartans, Thespians and Thebans remained to fight the Persians. Leonidas and the 300 Spartans with him were all killed, along with most of their remaining allies. The Persians found and beheaded Leonidas' corpse, an act that was considered to be a grave insult. When Leonidas saw that there is no hope in winning this battle, he let his army retreat, while he and his 300 Spartans was staying and fighting till their end. Although he did not win this battle, he earned much respect from all Spartans present then and those yet to come. 40 years after the battle, Sparta retrieved Leonidas' remains, or what were believed to be his remains, and a shrine was built in his honor. Juri Grando Alilovic, or Jur Grando (1579–1656), was a villager from the region of Istria, in modern-day Croatia, from the year 1579–1656, who may have been the first real person described as a vampire in historical records. Juri Grando lived in Kringa, a small town in the interior of the Istrian peninsula near Tingen. He died in 1656 due to illness, but according to legend, returned from the grave at night as a vampire and terrorized his village until his decapitation in 1672. It is said that for 16 years he terrorized his victims. The priest that buried him said that his corpse will go to people's houses, knock on their doors, and after a few days someone in that house will die. Even going as far as terrorizing his wife he was once married to when alive. She described him as looking like he was smiling and gasping for air all the time, which I guess is expected of a walking corpse. When the priest came face to face with him, he pulled out his cross and asked the vampire to stop tormenting them. Some brave villagers hunt him down and, with a hawthorn stick, trying to stick it into the vampire with all force, but failed as the stick just bounced off his chest. One night later 9 people went to the graveyard, dug him up, and to their surprise found a well-preserved corpse of Juri Grando with a smile on his face. They tried again and again to pierce through his heart, but it seemed like nothing was working, so one of the villagers took a saw and sawed the head off the corpse. As soon as the saw tore his skin, the vampire screamed and blood started to flow from the cut. According to folklore, peace finally returned to the region after Jur's decapitation. Juri Grando died of illness before returning to put shock in everyone for 16 years. Though there is no evidence that he drank blood from the villagers, he was still considered to be one of the first vampires ever recorded in history. We are all familiar with the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel, where they have an evil stepmom, got left in the woods to fight for themselves, met a witch, escaped from the witch, found their way back home to their loving father, and they lived happily ever after. But the origins of the story is much darker than you expected. The true story of Hansel and Gretel goes back to a cohort of tales that originated in the Baltic regions during the Great Famine of 1314 to 1322. Volcanic activity in the Southeast Asia and New Zealand ushered in a period of prolonged climate change that led to crop failures and massive starvation. In Europe the situation was quite dire, since the food supply was already scarce. When the Great Famine struck, the results were devastating. One scholar estimated that the Great Famine impacted 400,000 square miles of Europe. 30 million people of Europe may have been killed and 25% of the population in certain areas. In the process, elderly people voluntarily starved themselves to death, so that the younger generations can live. Others committed infanticide or abandoned their children. There is also evidence of cannibalism. The author William Rosen states in his book, The Third Horseman, that mothers were fed their children. The story was turned into a fairy tale in later years, and the true story lost its meaning through generations who changed it to be fit for children as a bedtime story. Knut's destiny to follow in his father's footsteps seemed inevitable, and he soon grew up to become an impressive Viking warrior, described as good-looking and possessing strong leadership skills. Canute was the product of a long line of Scandinavian leaders, as his father Sweyn Forkbeard was the son and heir to King Harald Bluetooth. Fun fact: King Harald Bluetooth Gormson, who was well known for two things: uniting Denmark and Norway in 958. His dead tooth, which was a dark blue-gray color, and earned him the nickname Bluetooth. Canute was very successful in younger years as he succeeded in almost everything. History shows that he is actually a descendant of the famous Viking we all know from the TV series, Vikings, Ragnar. No wonder he was called Canute the Great. With Viking power growing from strength to strength, Sweyn Forkbeard began to look further afield to expand his power base. After setting his sights on England, he targeted the Saxon king, Athelred the Unready, and with the support of his son, Canute, successfully took the English throne. Having usurped the English king, Sweyn's leadership was sadly to be short-lived, as he died on 3 February 1014, creating a power vacuum which Athelred felt determined to fill when he returned from his exile in Normandy. This created a divided nation, as some followed Athelred and others supported Canute. Without further ado, Athelred launched his attack, confident in the fact that he had the necessary support to reclaim his throne. At this time, Canute realized the necessity for more time and manpower and left England to develop an effective resistance before returning once more. With renewed strength bolstered by his forces of almost 10,000 men, many of them mercenaries, Canute returned to England and successfully conquered the country. After 14 months of warfare and despite the strong resistance from Edmund Ironside, Ethelred's son, Knut's victory was sealed. Athelred passed away on 23 April 1016. Which Canute saw as a great opportunity to become King of England. With some power struggles, the land was divided, with Canute ruling the whole of England except Wessex, which was ruled by Edmund. Thus should one of them die, he shall rule the whole of England. And on November 30, 1016, Edmund died, leaving Canute the ruler of England. Canute, now with the English crown in his possession, embarked on a marriage which would consolidate power even further by marrying Emma of Normandy, Ethelred's widow. In 1017, he married Emma and quickly went on to have 2 children, Harthacnut and a daughter called Gunhilda. To make sure the crown of England belongs to him only, he had Ethelred's son killed. Canute, having only recently consolidated his power in England, very quickly turned his attention back to Denmark, where in 1018 King Harald III passed away, leaving Canute to claim the Danish throne for himself by 1028. His control had extended even further, as he now became King of Norway too, thus presiding over an extensive North Sea empire. These measures, combined with the inclusion of Saxons and Vikings within his royal court, would strengthen his popularity and thereby secure his kingship. During his reign as King of England, as well as Denmark and Norway, Canute had succeeded in the mission which his father had endeavored to achieve, to rule over a vast North Sea empire, united by his governance. Canute was a great king as well as a great warrior and Viking in history. To be king of 3 countries and rule them all while keeping the peace is significant. He died at the hands of his own people. At the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030, Canute definitely left his mark in history. The Salem male witch who wasn't hanged. Back in the 16th century, witchcraft was considered a crime and punishable by death. Born in Northampton, England on August 6, 1611, Giles Corey was a local English farmer, who was prosperous in his farming. He possessed quite a big amount of land surrounding Salem. According to records, his behavior was not that well. Always up to something. It goes as far as where he killed one of his farm workers, Jacob Goodale, for apparently stealing apples, and was badly beaten, and only took him to the doctor after 2 weeks, where sadly, not long after he died. He was only given a hefty fine at the age of 65 for this gruesome act. He was married 3 times, where his last wife Margaret Corey had a son from her previous marriage called Thomas. Giles Corey was charged with witchcraft on April 18, 1692. His arrest came amid suspicions that he himself aroused after he mysteriously offered testimony against his wife, Martha, and then attempted to recant. On the day where he needed to confess, the 83-year-old Giles pleaded mute. Not saying a word at all, which was very strange at the time. He was not hanged but pressed to death, should he have confessed on the day. His land would have all gone to the government. Thus clever Giles only spoke 3 words for which he is famous for. And that is, I quote. Add more weight. For 3 days, the suffering continued, and on the 19th of September 1692 Giles Corey died. The one good thing that came out of it is that his lands was inherited by his family, and not sold on auction. Although there is claims that the governor of the time still threatened to take it. No one knows where Giles is buried, it is only known that he is buried in an unmarked grave. And legend goes that his spirit is still roaming in Salem until this day. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this small adventure, please like, subscribe and hit that bell for any updates. Feel free to comment down below what you would like to see next on Exploration X.